Hello, viewers, and welcome to Reminiscences. Our guest today is General Ishola Williams, who is a trained soldier, rising through the ranks to be the commandant of Army Signals, the commander of Training and Doctrine, I think it's called TRADOC, and as Major General, the Chief of Defense Training and Planning. I think it's from that job in July 1993 that he left the Army and embarked on a new career as a political and social activist. General, you are welcome to the program. And we'd like to begin by asking about why you began life, basically, before the Army.
Very interesting. Anyway, good to see you again. You are not looking like a retiree at all.
Thank you.
Father, grandfather, and so on were born, and this way I was born to grow up. Went to primary and secondary school, King's College in Lagos here. Then after that, worked for 1 year with the Nigerian Tobacco Company as a manager in training. And I just saw an advert in the newspaper asking for young people who want to join the military. Left in 1962.
King's College.
Yes, 1962. I worked for the tobacco company for the whole of 1963 as a manager in training. Because at that time, there were plenty of jobs around.
Yes.
They were just looking for people who passed their high school certificate. Not people with university degrees who are very rare at that time. And I wouldn't say that I liked the job of sitting down behind the desk as a manager or things like that. But it was a wide career open, you know, go to UK and train and so on and so on. But, and I saw an advert. And why I started to follow the advert about recruitment into the Army was that in our house at that time, we used to have a radio box fixed to the wall. It was marketed by Revolution Company of Nigeria. And they used to broadcast into that box. And I used to wonder, how can somebody sit somewhere and be talking through a box and be hearing him? And you cannot talk back to that box. What is behind that box? That was, you know, beginning of my interest in electronics and telecommunications. So when I saw the advert, and they included all the various corps of the Army, and included the signals and described what signals about, I said, oh, no. I'd like to find out what's behind that box. And I applied as a joke. I did not even tell my parents or anybody. They invited us to sit an exam. We sat an exam, and suddenly they said I've passed. I should come over to Kaduna. I didn't know what to tell my father. Because at that time in Southwest here, it's only rascals, no gooders who joined the military.
That's true.
And there was no way you could explain to them that there's a difference between officer, class, and the soldiers. So I just left quietly for Kaduna and did the interview for 1 week. I was still working in a tobacco company, but I took a leave. And a few weeks after, they said, no, you are passed. Then in January 1964, I got a telegram to say that I should report to Kaduna by so date in January. That was the beginning of my career.
So at that point, you had to tell your parents that you had to tell your parents at that point that you are leaving the tobacco company.
I couldn't tell my father too. I didn't tell my father even when I was admitted.
Yes.
But I had to tell my mother.
Yes.
Okay. I see sure. And I told her, she just prayed and said, hey, you want to go join the Army?
Yes.
I said, don't worry, we'll be all right.
Yes.
And I left for Kaduna.
Right.
My father did not know where I was for months.
This was the Nigerian Defense Academy.
At that time, they were not sure whether they were going to start a defense academy or not.
Right.
We were just going to go through the normal military training, and they will decide whether you go to Sandhurst, Canada, Ethiopia, or somewhere
Right.
for your cadet training.
Right.
But they had the idea that the best is for us to start our own academy.
Right.
And this, as I said, could be the pioneer cadets of the academy. Initially, they were thinking of either Canada or India.
Right.
In the end, decided on India
Right.
to come in and help set up the academy, because
Yes.
the Indians too have a similar setup, you
Yes.
know, for that. And that's how we ended up in the academy.
Right.
Now, there's also a decision whether we could stay there and get a degree. While they were arguing about that, it was decided that, okay, attach the academy
Right.
to the University of Ibadan and sit for a certificate of University of Ibadan,
Right.
which will be equivalent to A level,
Right.
for us to be able to go to any civilian university in Nigeria,
Right.
either Ahmadu Bello. It was also thought too that they could attach the academy to Ahmadu Bello University.
Right.
But there were officers at the senior level at that time who said, what do you need officers to have a degree for? They are soldiers, and so on. They couldn't see far away enough.
Right.
And then the Civil War came in 1967.
Right.
While we were arguing about whether to continue. Luckily, we had finished our exams with the University of Ibadan. And in 1997, they just said, okay, you've had some military training as officer cadet, you got some educational qualification, just go and do the rest.
In the front.
So we were commissioned in March 1967, and then I came into signals, luckily, which I was interested right from the word go.
Right. Right.
And joined signals in 1967, March, and sent to the training school for basic training. Was sent to Bonny during the Civil War
Right.
to go and work with late General Adekunle
Right.
as my commander,
Right.
and I was a signal officer.
Right.
Okay. And then the front in the Midwest then
Right.
opened up so suddenly. But I've read about the story. And so they had to form another division under late General Murtala Mohammed, who was then the head of signals.
Right.
And he was looking for officers to join him. So we were recalled, some of us were recalled from the various fronts we were to form the fulcrum of the new 80th Division that was supposed to face the then forces coming from the southeast.
Right.
So that's why I ended up in that place. And what was interesting was that they have to form very quickly new battalions. And as second lieutenant, we had to be second in command for that level to form the new battalions. So they gave us field rank of captains, you know, and brought in some of our seniors to be the battalion commander. And they couldn't find enough officers, of course. And officers from various corps, education corps, those who were brought in as commanders. So sometimes the responsibility for the command rested on we very young people because the officers they put on top of us were not trained for the type of job of commanding an infantry unit needed to fight.
So it was baptism by fire, so to say.
Yeah. So that's how we ended up in the front and went through that up to Onitsha, where it was a disaster. Crossing to Onitsha, you know, because there was no good planning and things like that.
What happened? There's a lot of blame game about what happened in that operation. Was it Murtala's fault? Whose fault?
The intelligence about the opponents, because I don't like to use the word enemy.
Because they're Nigerians now like us.
They're Nigerians like us.
Yes.
So the intelligence we had about the opponents,
Yes.
very, very wrong. And
Whose fault was that? Was
So-
the signals you are supposed to know to intercept and know what's going on?
yeah, but our senior officers at that time were not listening
Mm.
because we asked questions
Mm.
about, are you sure that we're not going to face this sort of fire?
Mm.
Because when you are doing amphibious operation,
Mm.
in which you are crossing the fire, you are in a very weak position,
Mm.
sitting on top of water,
Mm.
against somebody who's sitting on land.
Right. You are trying to cross the River Niger.
Yes,
Right.
and you hadn't got any good boat at all for any amphibious operation.
No boats.
No good boat.
Mm.
There was only one boat that they seized from somewhere at that time. At night we started crossing, they shot the captain of the boat and everything was drifting
Mm.
all over the place.
Mm.
I was leading battalion.
Mm.
At night we landed in the night. Everything was quiet.
Mm.
But man, early in the morning,
Mm.
it was as if we walked into a trap.
Mm.
We walked into a trap. I can't tell you how many soldiers we lost there.
Mm.
What I can tell you now is that the soldiers I was commanding
Mm.
saved my life
Mm.
because I was shot.
Mm.
They dragged me to the riverside
Mm. After you were shot.
after I was shot.
Yes.
They dragged me to the riverside and put me on a boat and said, you just go.
Mm.
You must not die.
Mm.
The soldiers.
Yes.
So that's how I crossed to the other side.
Mm.
Managed to survive with blood and everything. So I ended up in the hospital.
Was that the end of the war for you?
No, I ended up in the hospital. I was
Right.
brought to Lagos.
Mm.
Luckily, it did not affect any part of my body seriously. It was
Mm.
only my hand
Mm.
that the bullet went through
Right.
and it did not touch the bone.
Right.
So after 3 weeks, I went back.
Right.
By that time, they had succeeded in crossing after making 2 other attempts,
Mm.
at least 1 other attempt, which
Yes.
many lives were lost.
Yes.
Then Muhammad was very stubborn that he would cross.
Mm.
He crossed,
Even without the resources to cross.
yes,
Mm.
it's part of the losses.
Mm.
So we ended up, I rejoined them across the Niger as a brigade major then,
Mm.
in one of the brigades as a brigade major.
Mm.
And we went on, I went on. But then it was then realized that after the war, what will happen to Signal Corps?
Mm.
Because most of our telecoms trained engineers were from the southeast,
Mm.
and they all left.
Mm.
So they needed somebody to replace them.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
at least for the meantime. So even after the war,
Yeah.
they come back then, maybe. So I was then recalled in 1969, just before the war ended,
Right.
because, and I was sent to UK
Right.
to go and do a telecoms engineering course.
So that's
well,
how you left the front.
Yes.
Yes.
So I came back.
Let me ask you about these 2 famous commanders that you worked under, Murtala and Adekuli. Can you briefly let us into what kind of people? We know their legends, we know their stories, but you work with them. What kind of people were they? Murtala, you said, was stubborn, and insisted on this crossing with very poor resources as it is.
No, General Adekule was the type of person you describe as a swashbuckling soldier, who was fearless, courageous, and was ready to go.
Mm.
You see, sometimes I must say, without thinking hard and good planning.
Mm.
See, okay, but his leadership style was that nothing was impossible, and where I'm going, I must get there. And not only that, he commands from the front.
In the front?
Yes, he commands from the front, really, to that. And I would just say that he was a lucky commander. Many people believe that he has some
charm.
native charms
Yes.
that he uses.
Yes.
I think he was just that type of guy, and he was lucky. You know, in battles and wars, you find commanders like that who
survive.
Yes, and they survive.
So he and Murtala were kind of one of a type. They're similar. What is the difference between them in your experience?
Now, in case of Murtala, one thing about General Murtala, because I had worked with him as a signal officer before we went to war.
Yes.
He listens to ideas.
Yes.
He's very receptive to ideas.
Yes.
And if he's convinced, he push the idea to the end of his life.
Yes.
That type of person. But that case in Onitsha, he did not listen to advice.
Yes.
He did not.
Yes.
And he made a mistake
Yes.
with that very much.
Yes.
But at the same time, he was so stubborn that he would not let go unless he crossed that river Niger, and he crossed.
Yes. Why was he not court-martialed by the senior command? If there was this strategic error that...
No, you see, the point is that at that time, the Nigerian army was not the type of army that had a strategic plan or anything. No. It was an army, you had young General Gowon and his colleagues who were as young as him.
Yes.
But we had in big ranks that they hadn't got the experience to do. And apart from peacekeeping operations that fought up, and the thief operation and so on, that was the first real battle experience. Most of them who have never been to Congo or other places have already got to do. So sometimes they forget whatever you have been learned in books in the staff colleges and so on. And that is what they were calling the war, Banga Banga War. You see?
Banga Banga.
They call it Banga Banga War.
Yes.
In which just push the soldiers, tell them to go on, give them rifle, give them ammunition, they just keep firing.
So the commanders are on their own. They can make their plans and move on.
But what was interesting about it is that the planning, the operation and everything is left to the level of brigade commanders and battalion commanders. So if you want to save the lives of your troops, you must sit down and plan with them. But the other thing is that I had a very good experience. Most of the people were in my battalion were ex-servicemen because at that time, so since I was a young commander, they used to look at me and say, "No, you don't understand what you are talking about. We have fought war before you, World War II and things like that. What do you want to tell us?" I said, "Just go and die. Listen to me. Listen to me. The time we are operating is different from the time we are operating. And the opponents you are fighting are not Japanese and other people that are of not your own country. So we must have a different plan altogether." But what was also wonderful is that we had support of the people. Very important. See, we are giving money to feed soldiers. The villagers will bring food and everything. We don't even spend, sometimes we don't even spend a kobo.
Even in the east, where
where we are located,
sympathy was probably for Biafra?
Yes, especially.
Yes. Or is it the Asaba area now?
Behind the Niger.
Yes.
Yes. They were so generous. They were very, very generous. You know, at that time, the army couldn't afford military hospitals everywhere. The hospitals we found, the doctors, the nurses, everybody was part and parcel. And that is why we greatly succeeded. And on the part of the opponents too, that's why they succeeded too, because they had support of their own people. If not, the war couldn't have lasted for the time that lasted.
Yes, so from 1969, as you said, suddenly you are pulled out to go for training into signals, which is your dream. You wanted to be a signals officer. So how did it go? How was that training in England and the subsequent career?
To study telecommunication engineering
Yes.
at the Signals Telecom School in the southern part of England for about 18 months, and I came back immediately. And by that time, in 1969, as due, I was promoted to captain, and then met the commandant of a school of signals. Okay. I served there for a long time until I was promoted to major, and then as a major, I became commander. But what I can say is this, that the signal corps that I served was very, very lucky and opportunity to have Lieutenant Mohammed as our commander. Like I said,
was he the first commander of signals?
Yes.
Of the army?
He was the commander of Signal Corps there.
Yes.
After the Civil War.
Yes.
And he stayed there for a long time until he was made a Minister of Communications at one time. At that time, he was combining the job of the Signal Commander and Minister of... And he left the Corps to another senior officer who was, to me, was not fit to be the commander. Yeah. And I remember at a meeting, even then, before I was at a meeting, and I told him that he should make up his mind whether he wants to remain in the army or he wants to be a political minister. He cannot combine the two.
So General Mohammed?
Yes.
Yes.
At a meeting, I told him.
Yes.
Other officers were taken aback
that
I could talk to him that way. He looked at me and said, "You are right."
Yeah.
He said, "You are right." And immediately, he appointed one of our senior officers to take my job for him. Okay. Yeah. In addition to that, we started a program with the University of Ife because we needed engineers when I got back.
Yes.
And Britain was only ready to give us only one vacancy every time. How could you wait for one vacancy all the time? So I told him at that time, I said, "See, let me try Canada, Pakistan, India, and so on. For two things. One, how do they train their own engineers? What sort of curriculum, syllabus, or training they have?"
Yeah.
I will study that. He agreed. And I went around those countries. They gave me their program and everything. I came back. He said, "Now, what do you want to do with all these stories?" I said, "Sir, I will use these curriculums that I've got from those countries and try to design one for ourselves and go to Obafemi Awolowo University. They can run the courses for us." I was lucky my wife was teaching there. He's now a retired professor.
Yes.
And so I went to the dean of the faculty of science and engineering, and I said, "We want you to run a course for us, and at the same time, we want to do a joint research project, not only train our officers, but also a research project, like they do abroad." Yes. He looked at me. He said, "How do you want to do that?" I said, "We will give them a degree." I said, "Call it any name." Here is the curriculum. Okay. Here is what they can do in 2 years. He said, "How?" And I told him that, "Do you know that students don't stay in university for more than 6 months in the year? Holidays, public holidays in Nigeria, Saturdays and Sundays." He looked at me. So we look at the calendar, and it was true.
So soldiers will go without a holiday. You can do it in 2 years.
Yes. And we then started a program for officers in electronics engineering at University of Ife. And we started a research program also, which he approved. The people at the army quarter did not understand. But by force of personality, he understood. When that was proposed to him, he said, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see how we can convince the government. And he did. They now call ITT, Defense Coabula. I said, this is something that has to be done. Fabiola said ITT can do it. We've done it for many countries. So we now spoke to late Fabiola and said, see, ITT has a school in other states that is used to train their own engineers. Let us select a group of officers. They'll take the exams. Those who pass will go for the engineering course. The soldiers who pass will go for technology courses. And that's how we sent a group of officers who passed the exam. 2 sets were sent. ITT to Fabiola, paid for their ticket, paid for their families to stay there for 2 years. Both the technologists and the officers.
So is that program in Ife, is this continuing or has it stopped? The program in Ife that you started, is it still going on?
You trust Nigeria. Maintenance. So
stopped.
I don't know what the system looks like.
Yeah. When did you become commandant of Army Signals yourself? Under what circumstances?
When did I become commandant?
The commander, yes, of Army Signals.
That was in 1980-81.
Yes.
When I became. I was not even made the substantive commander. I was made an acting.
Okay.
Because they believed that I was too much of a troublemaker, you know, and things like that. And I ended up there because when I got back from the staff college in France, where I spent about 2 years, because the European staff college system is different from other people. You spend about 2 years there, you know, to learn a lot of things. So they posted me to Jaji as an instructor, Commander Staff College. Then the British Army training team was in charge of the program. The deputy commandant being a British deputy commander. Deputy commandant. When I was promoted to colonel, I was then told to become the chief instructor of the junior. The British deputy commander said no, because I already made up my mind I was going to change the curriculum of the junior division. Away, very much away from the British system to the European system with our own input. Do you know this guy? This gentleman flew all the way to Lagos to go and meet the chief of defense staff there and told him that, I want to disrupt the whole training system of the army. They believed him.
Of course.
So they said, okay, as a colonel, where can they put me now? Fortunately for me, the then commander of signals was going on a course for 1 year. Oh, they said it's okay. We might come and bring him back to his corps as the acting corps commander. Now, what was interesting is this is that they were doing so many things that I could not accept. Both as an officer, as a professional, and as an expert in my field. They buy equipment that we don't want without testing. So I introduced a trial squadron into the signals. You want to buy an equipment for us, we must test it all over the country. And I've taken part in some of the tests. So they now said they wanted to buy some radios from the British. So I said, let's bring some. So after the test, I said, we don't need it. Now, I don't want to mention the name of the chief of staff. The poor man is dead now. Insisted that we must buy it. So I said, sir, if you insist that we must buy it, I went to my office, drafted the letter, I said, for record purposes, sign this letter that we rejected the equipment, but who forced us to buy it. He signed it. Because they were going to get some kickback from me.
Yeah. Which role in the army? You were commander of TRADOC, and later on you were also chief of defense operations, training and planning. Which role in the army will you say is the highlight of your career, the one you really did the best?
No, the one that could allow me to make the sort of changes I was looking for.
Yes.
Was the chief of defense operations, training and planning.
Yes.
Yeah. I had an opportunity.
Yes.
Even though I spent only 3 months there.
Only 3 months. Yes.
From September to November.
Yes.
I had immense opportunity. So when I left TRADOC, because I was then placed in a position to look at the whole of the armed forces.
Yes.
From defense headquarters level. Then Abacha was our head at the Ministry of Defense. The idea was the Chief of Defense Staff. I was number 3. So, surprisingly, the impression of General Abacha by many others is not the same impression I have about General Abacha. Why? Another example. Whenever I want to take an action, the PAMSEC and the Chief of Defense Staff say, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. I'll go ahead and talk to the MA, to General Abacha.
To the minister.
At one time, General Abacha called me and said, if you have any good ideas, if they don't accept it, just come straight to me. Secondly, when I develop any budget, if others turn it down, and I push it to General Abacha, we approve. Any budget, we approve. Okay? So, I don't understand what relationship was. It was like that.
So you had a good relationship with him?
Yes. That's
so were you surprised at the bad reputation he developed later on and the way that he handled his head of state?
No, the point was this, was that, see, you need to understand the weaknesses of your boss. He knew I was not interested.
Yes.
And secondly, I was not the type of officers who will go to the guest house and be sitting there with them. No. I do my job, go home. You don't see me the next month.
Why did you last only 3 months as Chief of Defense Operations, Training and Policy?
People do deliberately to do that. Now, I was very, very sad really to leave.
But why did you leave? That's the question. Why did you last only 3 months?
Now, the point was that I was suspecting that they were planning a coup by Chief of Defense Operations and Plans. Some of the few people that
a coup against who? Against who? This was Babangida's time.
Yeah, Abacha's, when Abacha became the head of state in 1993.
Yes.
November.
Yes.
And I told them, don't do it now. We've had an election. Let the person who won the election, don't say. But it appears to me too that there had been an arrangement at the top level between some few officers. I don't know whether Babangida is a part of it or not, but he couldn't control it. Who made up their mind that Abacha has done enough to also have a time at the military head of state of Nigeria. And I later discovered that they did not even want the election to hold. But it was believed that let the election hold and see how we can then do the election. I said, we conduct the election, but many things happen, rigging and things like that. But person also conducted that election very well. It's still the best in Nigeria today.
So was your resignation from the army in 1993 as Chief of Defense Operations related to the just June 12, your dissatisfaction with how the June 12 was handled?
No, you see, the job of Chief of Defense Operations is very, very key to the function of the operational side of the armed forces.
Yes.
Okay. So, intelligence, all the Air Force Chief of Operations, Army, and so forth, they work together with you and so on. But they still have some autonomy, which you have no control over. Like, if we were to call Nigerian Defense Force instead of Nigerian Armed Forces, there's a difference. In the Defense Force, I, as the Chief of Defense Operations, we have the authority over the Chief of Operations of the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, which I do not have. So, out of respect, some of them will do some of the things I want them to do. Because at the end of the day, they now discover that every step I take is for the benefit of the armed forces. So I was working like fantastically well with
the other arms,
with all the arms of all the services. So the thing was progressing, and I was very happy in that operation. Everybody was happy. Okay, and like I said, the Abacha gave me the encouragement to be able to do that. If anybody wants to disturb you, just come to me. Okay, and so on. In fact, one time I was to be retired. He was the person who said that they should leave me alone. You know, so because sometimes you need to talk to some of these senior officers because they behave sometimes as if they have no brains.
Yes.
So or no strategic thinking, forgetting what they have been taught in what colleges and so on. So you need to remind them sometimes about that. That did not make me too popular, which I did not care anyway. Yeah. But to those who see what I'm talking about, accept that. But on the other hand, you also discover too that if you are really doing your job seriously, you have no time to think about planning the coup. And therefore, those who are interested in that, you just leave them aside. Yeah. Do your own thing.
Was this the Dia coup? Was it the coup that implicated General Dia? Was it what was happening in the background?
No, I'd already left at that time.
Yes, by that time.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, there was no doubt. Late General Dia was ambitious. He was. He too wanted to become head of state. Period. Yeah. So there's nothing hidden about that.
So you are not surprised if he was implicated in the
So I warned him before I left the army. You see, people also make a mistake about General Abacha. What the mistake? They believe that the man does not know what he's doing.
Yeah, he was daft.
He's not. The man knew what he wanted, how to get it done, and so on. Many officers lost their integrity because if you see how officers struggle to get political appointments, even senior one, is terrible. Yeah. You then ask yourself, why did you join the army?
Yeah. So how did you make the decision to leave? It's a very senior position in the army. which you held only for 3 months. How did that decision come about? Was it difficult?
It was very simple. Every human being, every man, woman, you must have some basic principles in your life. Period. And if those principles are compromised, get out.
Did your family and friends and associates support you?
I didn't consult anybody. It took me 3 days to make up my mind. 3 days.
Yes.
After the coup, we had a meeting.
Which coup?
Abacha's coup.
Yes.
They brought Abacha in.
Yes.
We had a coup. And I said, because it took 3 days before anybody could make an announcement.
Yes. That is after Shonekan was pushed aside.
Yes.
Yes.
And there was a meeting about what do you do after this coup. I said, do nothing.
Yes.
Give the person who won the election.
Yes.
Give back.
So that's why your politics came in.
Yes.
You wanted things to be...
So when we had that meeting, majority of the officers did not want the election results.
You want June 12th to be reinstated?
To be announced.
Yes.
Only 3 or 4 stood up and spoke. The others were scrambling what position did we get and so on and so forth. And I decided this is the time for me to quit.
Abacha didn't talk to you since you had this good relationship? He didn't
try
to persuade
what he did, he too was not too sure whether he should become or not. But there were people like Dia Useni who are interested he's going to become the chief of staff. Number 2. You know,
because it was clear Abacha would be number 1.
Yes, who is going to be the chief of staff, whether Useni or Dia or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. So they came to the meeting and that's what they were talking about.
Yes.
And then there's a meeting of senior officers at Tato Villa, Ujara Bagagida, later Komu, later Abacha, and so on. That was the time I knew there was no going back. Why? The Attorney General brought out a decree which made Abacha to succeed Shoneko at the head of state. Where in the world do you find a defense minister to be number 2? When the coup happened, in Mina, Babangida came to Mina and appointed some few people like chief of staff. Abacha flew to Mina, flew out, and appointed some people. And he never attended any cabinet meeting with Shoneko. What did that tell you?
Tell me what happened when you quit the army as a major general and chief of defense operations. You just went home? What happened?
No, I left, and then...
You left for where?
I left, I think November 20-something, 27th or so, 1993.
Yes.
And I had to decide what am I going to do with myself.
Yes.
Because I left, without any planning or preparation.
Yes.
And even with an empty bank account, Some people tried to help me.
Yes.
Somebody gave me a car to ride. There was too much wahala with the car.
Yeah.
I had to dump the car. I started taking public transport and so on. People offered me an office which I could sit and work. That too, for some time. And some people were trying to encourage me to be in business. One of them that I was trying to encourage me to be a cement distributor.
Yes.
But I had to deposit huge amount of money.
Yes.
But I haven't got a single naira in my bank account. I cannot deposit huge amount of money. And many others too like that. And what was so painful was this. It was only some few people in the north who were ready to say, come and be a contractor. The people in the south here, my own people, said, when your colleagues were making money, where were you? That's what they told me. But I already had at the back of my mind, that I was going to run this NGO. But I needed money to run the NGO. So if I can get contract, I can use what I can get from the contract to be running the NGO. I was not interested in business for business sake or making money or profit. I was interested in running this NGO. Okay. So, and that's how I started running this.
So did you get the money from contract? You got a first contract in order to get money to start?
No, what happened is that to start an NGO at that time in 1993 was very easy.
Yes.
You can get the incorporation certificate in 1 week.
Yes.
The lawyers don't charge you anything,
Yeah.
at that time, unlike now. And at that time also, there are not many NGOs who are working in the areas of conflict management in Nigeria and in Africa.
Yes.
Okay. So many of the donors were ready to help.
Yes.
You can bring out a big proposal, a good program. At that time also, ECOWAS itself did not even know what to do. So what I did was to get some people who were working with me in TRADOC, not soldiers, professors and things like that, while I was in TRADOC.
Yes.
Because I was trying to make TRADOC a think tank.
Yes.
A real think tank. See. So I did. So I said, why can't we join together and form this NGO? Nicely, Ford Foundation was ready to help us and helped us. My dear brother, working with Africans with money, it's a big problem.
But you're still doing that. You are still doing the NGO work.
We were doing projects to get people to account for the money and to do the project up to the standard expected of them as professors. Only very few. Some died not accounting for the money. Up to the point that I was taken to court.
By who?
By the members for insisting.
Okay.
No. Nigeria. Next time I will come as a Namibian, not a Nigerian.
General, there is this impression, and if I said widely in the media that you are a poor general, or you left, of course, and the evidence is that you are taking public transport. How are you able to survive after leaving the army so abruptly? Was the NGO work able to really support you?
Many people have been wondering too how I've been able to survive. I've always believed that if you have brains, honest and straightforward, people who really want person of character and integrity will approach you. Two, if at a very early stage of your life you are contented with what you have, are not greedy, are not looking for any extra in life, and especially for me, while I was in the military, I told myself that don't look at what our officers are doing. Remember that one day you are going to retire, and therefore all those paraphernalia of office and so on, you will not be able to afford it. Three, I made up my mind that if I have a house, it's going to be a bungalow. Few rooms for me and my family. I'm not going to stay in Victoria Island or Lekki. Where ground rent we take the whole of my pension.
So where do you live now?
I live not very far from here, in the village just back here. 5-bedroom bungalow. I'm very happy with it. I don't have high walls around my house. No.
Yeah.
The gate is low. The distance is low.
Yeah.
Armed robber visited me once.
Yeah.
They came and said, called me an idiot and everything. They couldn't find it. They found naira in my drawer. Took my laptop and my phone.
Why does this motivation to be different come from? Is it religious or ideological?
No, it's not a matter of being different. you cut your coat not according to your size, but according to the coat, I mean the cloth that you can afford to buy. The army pays a certain amount of money. Why should I live beyond that? Now that I run an NGO, over the time, the army have been increasing the pension. And the money the army pays me has helped in helping me to run the NGO.
You are also associated with the fight against corruption in Nigeria.
Yes.
Indeed, you were one time the head of Transparency International. What have you learned about corruption in Nigeria? How bad is the problem? And what have you done to help us deal with it?
Now, we live in an era of primitive accumulation. Okay. And it is difficult to find people who are not greedy. All in the name that they want to survive with their families. Okay. But what they tend to forget is that if you cannot send your children to private school, send them to public school, sit at home every evening and do their homework with them. They even do better than the one who go to private school. No matter how busy you are. Find time every day or on weekends. When you don't go to work, they don't go to school. Say, what have you done this week? Show me. This is the way we can do it at all. But no. Most Nigerians are looking for easy way out. And therefore, when they are shouting about poverty in Nigeria, it is because people don't know that poverty is a choice.
So you don't see us solving corruption because we are systemic.
So what have I done? I wrote a concept paper about 3 years ago on setting up a lab on followership.
I've seen that in Ilorin.
I've been trying to get an university in Nigeria until I was lucky to be connected to the wife of a late colleague, Professor Mede, University of Ilorin, who is now the dean of a faculty. So that made it easy for her to say that we can set up this lab.
So your idea is that if we want to deal with corruption in Nigeria, we must go back to the followers.
Yes.
And work on.
Yes.
This will take forever, isn't it? This will take more than our lifetime.
No, it won't. It won't. It won't. You see, what you do find is that it doesn't take a group of people to change anything. One man has changed history, one person. But this one now, you need a group.
Do you see us protesting against corruption like they are doing in Kenya now?
No, it cannot happen. Why? Because the system in Kenya is a bit centralized. Even though they have a sort of semi-federation with all the counties and so on, and the power still rests in the center. Okay. In Nigeria, we have states. What I would love to see is for revolution to start in the state.
The revolution in the states?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
If we can start revolution in the state, Nigeria will change. Because the governors are kleptocrats who are hiding under the federal government. Because every time you go, oh, federal government is not doing this, federal government is not doing that. What are you elected to do with the money you collect every month from the federal government?
Tell us a little bit about the private General Ishola Williams. When did you mentioned your wife in passing. When did you get married and how is your family life?
Yeah, I got married in 1967.
You are still a soldier.
Yes, then my half happened in London.
Yes, okay.
I was on the course, on the telecoms engineering course then.
Yes.
You know. I got married during that time.
So you met in London?
She was a teacher, and then later on, she went and did master's and doctorate degree.
Yes.
In United States, and got back. I started teaching at University of OAU University.
Yes. Ife.
That was deliberate. because I already made up my mind that I will not touch any money that does not belong to me. And therefore, I needed a wife that can look after herself. 2, I'm a soldier. I can die at any time. My wife must not beg anybody because she's qualified enough to earn. And she has worked very hard to become a professor and things like that. And she did a doctorate at that time in aquacultural economics, in which there were very few Africans at that time. So she has a scientific background, and my children, they're all working, you know, in one place or the other, about 4 of them. One of them is in sport, the youngest of the family. One is working in Uganda, and
Uganda,
NGO. She was working in Abuja before they sent her to Uganda. And then 2 of them are working in other states. So,
what do you do in your spare time? Do you have any hobbies, anything you do for pastime?
For my pastime?
Yes.
This NGO.
You don't have any hobby? You don't do any sports?
Yeah, because I used to be handball chair.
Did you play handball yourself?
Handball is very popular in Nigeria now because one, I made up my mind that I must spread it all over Nigeria.
Yes, okay.
So
you're the chair of the Nigerian Handball Association? Right?
Yes, there is.
Yes.
But what you discover in Nigeria that people are not ready to volunteer at that time of money. And even if they have plenty of money, you then wonder what they do with the money. Even if their children are very successful.
Were you serious when you said, if you had to come back to life again, if you had to come back again, you will prefer to be a Namibian, not a Nigerian? Were you serious?
Serious. I will tell you why.
Why Namibia?
It's a small country, small population. So
thank you very much. Thank you, General Williams. And thank you, viewers, for staying with us in this episode of Reminiscences. Until we meet in another program, goodbye.